Hello and welcome to my presentation of issuing credit cards to college students and the ethical dilemmas of that. This is for the class Foundations of Applied Ethics at Anderson University for the Doctorate of Business Administration program under Dr. Emmett Delaney. In this presentation, we will be looking at the ethical implications of issuing credit cards to college students. We will also be looking at the background of that, and we will actually be applying this to an ethical model. So let's go ahead and get started. The questions that we are actually going to be examining is first, is it ethical for credit cards to be marketed to college students? We will actually see in question 3 that some college administrations will actually receive kickbacks from origination fees that are collected from the origination of these credit cards. But the first thing we have to ask ourselves is it really ethical for credit cards to be marketed to college students at all? Mainly because, as we will see, many of these college students do not have the income available to actually service the debt. The next question we will be looking at is it ethical for a credit card to be originated for college students if insufficient income is not available to support the debt? This is a big question in terms of finance, in terms of underwriting. Is it really ethical for students to be able to be issued a line of credit, a consumer line of credit, and be able to actually run that credit up in a almost flagrant fashion? Next, in question 3, is it ethical for colleges to accept a kickback from credit card origination fees on college campuses? So, is it ethical for college administration to actually receive this kind of kickback, knowing that the large amount of these credit card origination fees will essentially create college credit card debt, or credit card debt for college students, that will actually lead over into their life after college? So let's continue our discussion by looking at the background. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the rise of credit card usage by college students. According to Leonhardt, half of college students, approximately 53%, are charging purchases to 2 or more credit cards. So half of the college population is actually charging purchases to 2 or more credit cards. That's an astounding statistic. It is actually up from 41% in 2020 and doubled from the 2012 statistics, also according to Leonhardt. So what we need to understand is that the rise of these kinds of transactions are hitting new highs. Students are actually going to be using these credit cards for everyday purchases, instead of it being, what used to be in the form of just an emergency. Well, all of a sudden, going to fast food restaurants and ordering pizza, these become, emergency cases in which credit cards are actually being used. The next thing I'd like to note is that the rise of credit card balances by college students. We are seeing a dramatic rise in the amount of balances that are being carried over from month to month, just making those minimum payments. Many students will likely carry balances on credit cards. So from month to month, these credit card balances are going to be maintained with interest accruing on them daily. So this is something that we have to take into consideration when we examine the marketing and originating of credit cards on college campuses. Then there's the inability of the demographic to actually pay back the credit card debt. There's inadequate income available to service the debt among the demographic, according to Opperman. So we see that credit card transactions are on the rise. We see that carrying those credit card balances from month to month as they are accruing interest is also on the rise. And on top of this, the demographic of college age students are not able to actually service the debt. This is a problem. And then the fourth thing I would like to look at is that credit card companies are specifically targeting college campuses. They are doing this to obtain or charge hefty interest and transaction fees, according to Irby, or aiming to build loyalty among a young demographic. That is something that credit card companies are hoping to establish with college age students. We kind of start early so that we can build rapport and that we can build loyalty with the brand. But should we really be targeting these college age students to actually take on this consumer debt, knowing what we know? And what we also can note is that college administration may receive financial kickbacks from credit card origination on their campuses, according to Irby. So we've seen all these statistics, and now we need to understand: is this really ethical for credit card companies to continue this kind of action on college campuses? So here's the ethical methodology that we are going to use, or that I'm going to use, is the utilitarian ethical model. According to Gustafson, this provides a vision of ethical behavior which holds the common interest of humanity as of utmost importance when making a moral decision. So the way we are really going to approach this is that we keep the idea of the common good of humanity, the common interest, so the greater good, if you will, at the heart of utilitarianism. Also, if we conceive in terms of business, if we conceive of business as a means of transforming culture and society, then utilitarianism is the ethical perspective which most easily helps us to address the ethical relationships and responsibilities between business and society. This is where we are going to see whether or not issuing these credit cards on college campuses are actually ethical through the utilitarian lens. So we have to understand our businesses actually connecting with society in an ethical way. Continuing on this idea of the utilitarian ethical model, we need to understand that in terms of ethical business, utilitarianism is one, consequentialism, and has a shared goal of the common good at its heart. So we have to remember the idea of the common good being the end goal of utilitarianism is key. And next, it takes account of long-term consequences or the prosperity of society. So we have to remember that this is not just a short-term lens we are looking through. We are looking through a long-term lens, a long-term consequence to see if this is actually benefiting society or if it is actually hindering society. So with that being said, let's jump into our questions and analyze whether or not it is ethical to issue credit cards to college students on college campuses. So question 1, is it ethical for credit cards to be marketed to college students? What we need to remember is that utilitarianism is consequentialist and has a shared goal of the common good at its heart. And remember, it is a long-term focused outlook. So as we've already established, students are creating more credit card debt and carrying balances on those credit cards. So, is it really ethical for credit cards to be marketed to college students if, statistically speaking, more credit card usage is being used, balances are being carried over from period to period, and the demographic is not able to sufficiently service the debt? According to this ethical model, it's not ethical under utilitarianism. Also, college campuses allow for this marketing, allowing this marketing from kickbacks being given for credit card origination on participating campuses has already been established as well. And we will further review this in question 3, but the conclusion here is that it's not ethical under utilitarianism. The reason being is that companies look to strengthen the bottom line, that net income that is going to be established through transaction fees and through accrued interest on these balances that are being carried over from period to period. The betterment of the common good is not being considered. And in this case, the common good is not this corporate structure. The common good is going to be these college-age students who are racking up an insurmountable amount of credit card debt and not being able to service that debt. Question 2. Is it ethical for a credit card company to be originated for a credit card? Is it ethical for a credit card to be originated for college students if insufficient income is not available to support the debt? Utilitarianism is going to focus on the overall positive outcome for society instead of emphasizing shareholder wealth maximization. Credit card companies are focusing on shareholder wealth. Okay, the idea is not to protect the consumer. The idea is to create wealth, and through the eyes of a credit card company. They will do this through accrued interest and transaction fees. We can actually parallel this idea to the housing crisis of 2008. If we can recall, in the housing crisis of 2008, we had lenders who were desiring to originate profitable business loans, financial institutions filling the demand for mortgages, and then rating firms were catering to the desires of clients who are actually paying the rating firms to actually rate different securities that these mortgages comprised the market of. So, the same kind of parallel can be made to credit card companies. Lenders are desiring to create profitability. Okay, so these lenders in the credit card companies are desiring to create profitability in the form of transaction fees, in the form of accrued interest. They're also looking to cater to the demand for credit cards because, as we can see, as we have already seen, college students are currently raising the ceiling to which they are actually using these credit cards. Remember, over half of college students are using credit cards, at least up to 2 credit cards. They're able to profit from this because these students are carrying these balances over regardless of whether or not they're able to service the debt. So the conclusion that I'm reaching is that it's not ethical under utilitarianism. The reason for this is that issuing credit cards to college students violates the principle of utilitarianism by not keeping the shared goal of the common good at its core. Okay, the common good being the society in which the credit card companies are interacting with, which is the college students who are not able to service the debt. And then question 3, is it ethical for colleges to accept a kickback from credit card origination fees on college campuses? Another component of utilitarianism is that it pursues long-term benefit and so has the rules of morality following the greatest happiness principle. We will talk about this in just a moment, but the greatest happiness principle provides moral guidance. Okay, so the greatest happiness principle states that it holds that actions are right in proportion as they tend to promote happiness. They are also wrong in proportion as they tend to produce the reverse of happiness. So, the idea of college campuses receiving kickbacks at the expense of college student consumer debt completely contradicts the greatest happiness principle, because the whole is not actually receiving happiness in the long term. They're actually receiving the reverse of happiness. College administrations are creating the reverse of happiness by accepting kickbacks at the demise of ill-advised consumer debt, student debt. The conclusion is that it's not ethical under utilitarianism. The reason: the reverse of happiness is being accomplished through the receipt of kickbacks from credit card origination. Therefore, we can't see this as being something that is completely ethical, because we are benefiting at the expense of our students. So, in conclusion, credit card issuance to college students is not ethical under utilitarianism, solely because it doesn't keep the principle of the betterment of the whole at its core. It is solely looking to better shareholder wealth, to better the income of an institution, and that cannot be the focus when we are looking at credit card debt to this demographic, because of the reasons we've looked at already. 1, credit card usage is on the rise for college-age students. 2, they are not able to service the debt. They're carrying these over these balances over from period to period, constantly accruing interest, which may ultimately result in things like default, collection, bankruptcy, all these things that are essentially going to hinder these college students from succeeding in a long-term lens. So with that, we can conclude that through the utilitarianism ethical model, that issuing credit cards to college-age students is not ethical. Thank you for your time. I'd like to show you my works cited in this presentation. I appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you very much.